Happy Thanksgiving to everyone out there. Welcome back to the War Room. I'm your host, Owen Schroyer. We are now joined by Dr. Steve Pieczenik. As always, you can find him at stevepieczenik.com as well as on Twitter. An expert on everything behind the scenes going on with regime changes and the likes of military operations. Dr. Pieczenik, thank you so much for joining me today over the holiday.
Pleasure, Owen. Congratulations on your new show. I'm very proud of you, and I'm proud of InfoWars. You deserve it, Owen. You've worked hard, so I think it's great. And you look great, by the way.
Thank you for coming on today. This is your first time on with me here.
Huh?
This is your first time on the War Room, so I'm glad that it happens over Thanksgiving.
Oh, well, it's an honor for me. Owen.
And look at that. And he has a smile on his face to boot, so you know he's happy. You know he's glad to be on because he has a smile.
Well, because you are, like Alex, you have the same technique and the same talent. You're informative and you have a good sense of humor. Nothing can beat that. That's the problem with the mainstream media, quite frankly. They don't have a sense of humor and they don't have a sense of perspective. You and Alex and the whole group have a sense of perspective and you happen to be right on. Trump was correct when he said, you know what, the best thing that's happened so far is the fact that women are complaining and the harassment charges are coming out. I look at it a little bit differently, but I agree with him. What's happening in effect, and I've written it in a blog, is that women are coming into power. The asymmetry of power, women have been socialized to be second in command, so to speak, is over. What's happening now is the young women, the millennials, and other women are coming into a parity position. And it came through kind of a revolution that I had not expected, which was really sexual harassment, which begs the question, not only is the individual involved, but what happened to the entity? When you have a Charlie Rose and he's on both PBS and he's on CBS and he's been there for 20 to 30 years.
And Bloomberg as well. He also was suspended from Bloomberg.
Right. So how is it possible? Tell me, Owen, I really have no idea, understand how PBS, Bloomberg, and CBS did not know about his maladroit and miscreant behavior, that he was harassing women. They knew about it.
Absolutely.
So what we're really getting into is a far bigger revolution. It's not just about the individual. It's about the systems that are involved. The media, the public broadcasting system is funded by us, by the citizens. It should have been involved in immediately dismissing it. So the issue right now is who was involved over Charlie Rose. In other words, who's responsible for it? Let's start firing the people at PBS.
Well, we know that I think it was either his manager or perhaps it was the manager that was whatever department at CBS. She had been complained to by assistants, by interns before, and she just sloughed it off like, oh, that's just Charlie. That's just old Charlie. So that, I mean, that was a woman too.
That's correct, Owen. So what happens, it's irrespective of a woman. When you come into power politics, it doesn't matter whether you're a woman or a man. Normally, the woman is considered asymmetrical in power, doesn't have as much power, so she was afraid. What happens to a system like this is what we call collusion. Everybody gets together and quietly agrees not to disturb the major problem or the major product. In the case of Charlie Rose, he's a product. The product that went into CBS, that went into PBS, that went into Bloomberg. Everybody up and down that chain is responsible for the collusion that was involved. I mean, in other words, you don't have one co-conspirator. You have a whole group of co-conspirators. And that's what's happening in Congress, in the Senate. Now we have to start cleaning them out. It's not just a question of the individual. It's a question of the entire system. For example, I've been in Hollywood. I understand the system. The system is corrupt. To say that Harvey Weinstein's the only individual who molested 5 or 10 or 12 women is absurd. I could show you a whole scan of individuals who were involved. And the system is so corrupt that I was able to basically intimidate the system into giving me money to leave the system. That's how weak the system is in Hollywood. It's also that weak in the congressional system. In other words, these systems have to be cleaned out. Then we have to ask ourselves, are they relevant? Do we really need a senator and a congressman? The answer for me is no, not in the world of the internet. They're totally irrelevant. They take our money. They waste our time.
I think they've been irrelevant for a while. But I want to step back for a second because I want to get to the root of this issue. Do you think that, I mean, how much of this do you think is organic, and how much do you think of this is collusion on the back end to try to create an environment where politically you can go after any enemy you want by saying he sexually harassed me, she sexually harassed me, and then the media just reports that as truth, as guilt, and then it's just over politically for that individual?
It's a good question, Owen. Basically, it's inherently organic. In other words, within the systems, they're all collusive. What's happening right now as the part of the revolution that's coming out is the system itself, or j'accuse, the part where I say I accuse somebody, becomes weaponized. And that type of attack has become part of the revolution that breaks open the system. So the system is now wide open. You've got an inferno of discontent coming out, and it will continue until there'll be a subsistence of accusations, and then the systems have to be cleaned out. Some of them may not appear. Let me give you a sense. I mean, I work at the Producers Guild in Hollywood. I don't see the movie industry continuing. Basically, what you're seeing is the end of an industry that was producing hundreds of millions of dollars of films that nobody saw. You see the end of the TV industry. Nobody was watching it. You're looking at CNN. That's the death of CNN. That's gone. With the AT&T coalition with Time Warner, and I was part of Time Warner, you're going to see the end of CNN and the various other talk shows because they're really not interested. In turn, what happened, and I kept saying it, the Alex Jones show, your show, becomes more important because you were initiated 12, 13, 14 years ago through the internet. And the old systems never understood it. Congress never really understood that I can literally get rid of every congressman and senator and vote. I don't need somebody there to discuss my case. I don't need somebody in Hollywood to make a $380 million film when I can see some streaming going on for 5 cents or 20 cents. They're antiquated. Whereas InfoWars is still the major news outlet, which we call the alt-right, the alternative right. Well, they can call it whatever they want. The truth of the matter is we've been more accurate and more incisive than any other newspapers. But, Owen, the answer is yes, it is organic to the system. Then what happens? They weaponize the individual accusations so that they can try to get maximum leverage. That's not going to work.
So that's an interesting take, and it's kind of a breakthrough for me philosophically to think that this could be what brings about the end of the mainstream media, not their lies over the decades, the fact that they've pretended to hoist this virtue over the rest of the people, saying, we're for women, we're for minorities, when CNN has hundreds of racial discrimination cases going on right now. A lot of these leftist media outlets are suffering from sexual harassment claims. Look at Mark Halperin, look at Weinstein, look at Thrush, the list goes on and on. And then you mentioned kind of how there's a bit of a French Revolution aspect to this with the I accuse. But I want to get this on the other side. We'll leave a little cliffhanger, Steve. Just give them a little cliffhanger. But why do you think they're projecting this onto the rest of society? Why do you think that the media and Hollywood and the press is trying to project this onto the rest of us?
You have an excellent question there. The projection, let me give you a little technical detail in psychiatry. Projection, denial, and distortion are the most primitive defense mechanisms you can have for an individual or for a group. So you've hit it right on the head. As they're falling apart, as they're hitting the moribund period of their life, in other words, they're entering into a death spiral, the only defense mechanism they really have is projection, to accuse others of what they were guilty of. Nobody personifies that more in my ideal than Charlie Rose. He hit 4 different networks, 4 of which will not be here, 1 of which we have funded. But when you look at it, it's a total travesty. What happens in collusion when you break it up?
These are all symptoms. We'll be right back with Dr. Pieczenik. These are all symptoms of the establishment collapsing, folks, and dying. Welcome back to the War Room. Dr. Pieczenik is our guest, and in the last segment, we were getting into why the establishment media and some of the establishment politicians are trying to project this culture that's being exposed in Hollywood, the entertainment industry, certain media outlets, of sexual harassment and men just basically bullying women into doing whatever they want. And I was asking Steve why they're trying to project that onto the rest of us in society. And he was breaking it down how this is a defense mechanism because now they see themselves as vulnerable as this is all being exposed. And philosophically, this is another symptom or a sign to recognize that the establishment is dying right now in these entities, in these outlets. Go ahead and expand on that, Dr. Pieczenik.
Well, what happens is when you expose a Charlie Rose and you get the underlying sanctimonious nature and the hypocrisy of a Charlie Rose, who knows very well what he was doing, and he knows very well that he was bullying everybody, yet he took the position of a very high-handed individual who really could do no wrong, say no wrong, and seemed really perfect. The problem was that he knew within that background he was totally vulnerable. So was the system. And what happened is the system was racing around to cover up all the misdeeds that he had, mainly the women he had hit upon, the women he had walked in front of naked. I mean, all the nonsense that came on, and shows how a pathetic individual he was. But that's not the only issue. The real issue is not only that he's pathetic, but that the establishment which paid him millions and millions of dollars was absolutely out of control and absolutely hypocritical and very deleterious to any individual, any ideas, or any philosophy. Let me give you an example. PBS covered him for what, 10, 20 years? That's our funding. Yet they knew very well he was a problem. CBS knew very well he was a problem. That's millions and millions of dollars that went into covering it up. Bloomberg News knew he was a problem. There wasn't any secrets here. He didn't make any bones about it. He was very proud about it for 20, 30 years, that he was a jock who could grab any woman that he wanted to and literally use his power. This is about power and asymmetry of power. He was more powerful than an individual. That individual happened to be a woman, but he was doing the same thing throughout the system. So the system became collusive. That is, in order to protect itself, it was very vulnerable, and it all got together to make sure that no one would squeal on this guy, because he was the weakest element in a weak system. In order to protect themselves, they accused us, the conservatives, the right wing, it didn't matter, Trump. And Trump never denied what his past was. But on the other hand, he's had his daughter, he's had a beautiful wife, you know, he's comported himself with some elegance, and that couldn't stick on him. So what happened is Trump very cleverly allowed everybody to project their own discontent onto him. And what you saw was one massive failure after another. It wasn't just a woman on a woman. It was Kevin Spacey on a young man. It was not only homosexual, it was pedophilia. And what I'm concerned about is that the entire system is really concealing a huge pedophilia ring that goes from the State Department, the White House, not this White House, but the other White Houses, and the politicians right into Hollywood. And that would be really criminal. And that's what's going on. As you see the adult system breaking down of heterosexual, homosexual, LGBT, whatever that may be, it gets to the really rancid part, which is pedophilia. And that is the sine qua non of corruption and treason. And that's where we have to get to very quickly now.
Yeah, if the thread keeps getting pulled on, I think the sweater will eventually reveal all of that. And it's almost some, I hope so. It's almost some crazy twisted irony where the tape that they released, the Billy Bush tape that they released to try to slander and character assassinate Trump, what he said in that tape actually comes out as being true. That's all these men were doing. That's how all of these men felt. I mean, so they hate Donald Trump for saying it, and then it all comes out that, okay, well, this is how they all felt.
Well, it's interesting, Owen. You bring up a point, and you know I've been saying for a long time. Everybody wants to portray Trump as sick or in some way incompetent, and I said no, he's not. Whatever personality traits he has are his. You may not like them, that's your problem, or somebody's problem. It's not my problem. But what Trump doesn't do and he doesn't filter a lot of the junk that comes through to a politician. So he'll mirror it right back. When he said that the father of that young man who stole something in China is ungrateful, he's correct. I don't care what the underlying issue is. I don't care if the gentleman's black, green, or yellow. When you steal something in China, believe me, you're going to jail. I know the Chinese. I've worked with them. I have a full respect. But for Trump to say to somebody, look, you ingrate, I was the one who brought it up. It wasn't an issue of the State Department or anybody else. President Xi Jinping listens to one man only. That's Trump. For many, many reasons. He understands power, and power comes back to Xi through Trump and vice versa. He doesn't listen to the State Department.
Trump was right. Trump was right, and LeVar Ball is just, an ungrateful, disrespectful, sad sack. But Dr. Pieczenik, I only got 4 minutes left with you. I got to change subjects here before I get you off here. What do you make of, and I want to take it one step further, how rare is it? Is this common? Is this rare? H.R. McMaster supposedly drinking and bad-mouthing President Trump, insulting him, he's a clown, he's this. Is that a lone act? Is that how other people feel around Trump? And what do you make of that story now breaking, even though it was reported months ago?
Okay, well, if that's the case, McMaster's in serious trouble. We in the Clancy franchise had given him some money for ArmCAT. That was back in 2000, early 2000. I don't know the gentleman himself, but if he badmouths the president and he shoots off his mouth, there's no excuse for that. He has to be fired immediately. One of the things that I've always respected in the Reagan, the Schultz administration, and the Bush administration, and even in the Kissinger administration, we had a tight ship. Every single individual would not express anything like that in front of anybody else. It wasn't a question of hypocrisy. It was simply a question of having command and control and keeping your mouth quiet. No one could do that better than Baker. Baker did it for the Reagan administration. He did it for Bush Sr. And what you did is he incurred respect for the presidency, and he incurred respect for him, for Bush, and also for Baker. But at the same time, you didn't have to always agree with him. But if you shoot your mouth off about the president, listen, I didn't agree with Jimmy Carter and what he did. But what I did was I resigned when he made the final order for me to go to Iran. I'd been insubordinate before on the hostage siege. I was insubordinate on another siege. So the only thing I felt that was legitimate for me as a military officer, Navy captain, was to resign. And I resigned quietly. And after me, 6 months later, Cyrus Vance resigned. That is the right way to perform in the White House. You do not deprecate the president for any other reason if you're working for him. If you do that, leave the job. Have the courage to leave. I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm not totally surprised.
So you don't think this is going on, though, amongst anyone else in the administration or anyone else that hovers around the Oval Office with President Trump?
Well, you and I know it's a leading question now, and the answer is, of course, it must be going on, because Trump elicits a whole gamut of responses, and rightfully so. But if you're working for a president, no matter who it is, if I don't like the president, I don't agree with the president, it's my job as an official to the republic, not just to the presidency, to resign. And if McMaster's is doing that and others are doing that, they might as well resign or be thrown out very quickly. What I think Trump needs is a sweeper. That's what I was brought in various administrations. A sweeper, somebody who comes in, throws out everybody who's not relevant, who badmouths anybody, and then gets out of it. He doesn't stay there. He doesn't remain there. And I believe John Kelly has that capacity, and I believe Mattis has that capacity. So it's up to the two of them to decide what to do in the White House. But if McMaster has shot off his mouth and he's inappropriate, the best thing he can do as a military officer is to resign. If not, I would, take away his rank and other things. But that's what I would do.
All right. Well, Dr. Pieczenik, you always have great intel. Thank you so much for joining us today. Happy Thanksgiving. Any final words before we let you enjoy the holiday? Well, I think everybody should be a little bit comfortable. The Republic is doing very well, and you're doing exceedingly well. I'm very proud of you in the War Room, and I want to wish everybody happy Thanksgiving.
It's not in turmoil. We're not in a civil war. This is just part of being in a democracy, and you're beginning to see the give and take that Thomas Jefferson was talking about. So God bless.
And so you would say that right now it's okay to recognize we are having victories, yes, and we can celebrate.
Correct. And we should celebrate, because that's the beauty of a democracy and a republic. And thank you, Owen, for the change.
Absolutely. Happy Thanksgiving, Steve. We'll be right back on the other side. Don't go